Let me tell you something fascinating about silence in the digital age. We now live in a time where nearly everything is shared. Birthdays, coffee mugs, sunsets, laughter, even sorrow masked behind filters. Yet among all this noise, some people remain completely unseen. They scroll quietly, observe deeply, but rarely ever post. You might even know someone like that. Or perhaps that person is you. And this question always lingers: why? Why would anyone choose to stay invisible when everyone else seems desperate to be noticed? It's easy to assume that those who don't post are simply shy or introverted, but that's only part of the truth. Beneath the surface lies a deeper psychology, one that reveals much about human behavior, self-awareness, and a subtle resistance to a world obsessed with being visible. For some, silence isn't emptiness, it's control. It's the ability to decide what remains unseen, because whether we acknowledge it or not, social media has quietly reshaped how we define ourselves. It celebrates display, it rewards noise, yet those who choose to stay silent often see the world with remarkable clarity. They observe without interrupting, think before reacting, and reflect before judging. Psychologists have discovered something interesting. People who post less frequently often score higher in traits like self-control, introspection, and emotional independence. They're less driven by comparison or the need for validation. In essence, they aren't trying to prove who they are. They're trying to understand it. And in a world overwhelmed by constant performance, that is truly rare. Most of what we share online isn't just communication, it's identity construction. Each post becomes an unspoken attempt to belong. Every caption, image, or update quietly asks, "This is me. Do I fit in?" But once you stop posting, something changes. Your sense of value begins to separate from likes and comments. You stop framing experiences as content and start living them for yourself. This is the quiet psychology behind those who choose not to post. They're not rejecting social media. They're searching for authenticity in a world that often feels curated. It's not about being anti-technology or avoiding people. It's about resisting the urge to turn life into a highlight reel. When you realize how easily perception can be shaped, you begin to appreciate what can't be displayed: silence, depth, imperfection, and truth. For many, the choice to step back from posting comes after a moment of recognition that real connection exists beyond the screen. Perhaps it began as emotional fatigue. There was a time when they shared everything, but eventually it stopped feeling genuine. They noticed that each time they posted something beautiful, an unseen pressure grew, a need to keep outdoing themselves. Life stopped being lived. It started being performed. So they withdrew quietly. No grand goodbye, just a gradual fading from the feed. But here's what people often misunderstand. Silence doesn't mean indifference. Not posting doesn't mean they've stopped feeling or caring. In fact, it often means the opposite, that they care deeply about presence, meaning, and preserving what feels sacred. In psychology, this connects to a concept known as psychological ownership. The sense that something, whether it's a thought, a memory, or an experience, belongs profoundly to you. And when you share something online, that sense of personal ownership fades slightly. The moment becomes public property, open to judgment, misinterpretation, and even ridicule. Those who choose not to post are often protecting their sense of ownership over their own lives. They keep their experiences private, untouched, and genuine. Perhaps that isn't sadness or withdrawal. Perhaps it's a quiet form of freedom. Think about it. When was the last time you did something meaningful without feeling the urge to share it? When did you last laugh, cry, or accomplish something without instantly thinking about posting it online? That impulse to share everything isn't natural. It's learned. It's the result of years of likes, shares, and dopamine loops that have trained our minds to link validation with worth. So when someone steps away from that system, it can seem like rebellion, but it's actually a form of healing. They start rediscovering the joy of doing things purely for themselves, cooking without photos, traveling without tags, feeling without the need to explain. In that quiet, something reawakens. A self-awareness that no longer depends on an audience. But not everyone who avoids posting does so from peace. Some are guided by fear of judgment, rejection, or being misunderstood. Social media has intensified a subtle kind of anxiety known as self-presentational pressure, the constant awareness of being watched, even when you're not. For many, it's exhausting. They worry their words might be misinterpreted or worse, ignored. So they withdraw, not from connection itself, but from the overwhelming cost of visibility. They long to be seen authentically, not superficially. And often the quietest people online are the ones with the loudest minds. They aren't absent, they're overflowing. They simply choose stillness over spectacle. And within that silence lies a profound philosophy of self. In a world obsessed with attention and visibility, choosing to remain unseen becomes a deliberate act of self-definition. It conveys, I exist beyond what you perceive. These individuals might observe others' lives, nodding, smiling, even feeling a quiet ache, but they rarely project their own, because they understand a simple truth. Not everything experienced is meant to be displayed. The deepest forms of growth, loss, and transformation often happen quietly, unnoticed, undocumented. After enduring such silent changes, one learns that invisibility does not equal insignificance. It is, in fact, where authenticity develops rather than performs. This reveals the paradox. Social media was built to connect us, yet often leaves people feeling more detached than ever. When you stop posting, you stop chasing digital closeness and begin rebuilding genuine relationships. You notice who checks in without updates, who remembers without reminders. Those unspoken connections feel weightier, warmer, and undeniably more real. People who refrain from posting inhabit this quiet space. They cultivate bonds that need no validation, take solace in unshared experiences, and allow life to unfold without converting it into content. This also ties to identity security, knowing yourself without an audience. When content within external validation becomes unnecessary, that is not pride, it is calm. Ironically, those who share the least often hold the most compelling stories, saved not for display but for those who truly listen. We're sitting across a table, not across a screen. Because genuine connection isn't measured in comments or likes. It lives in shared silence, in eyes that meet, and in laughter that needs no audience. These are the people who hold entire worlds inside them. They think deeply, observe quietly, and understand without speaking. They don't need applause for existing. They just live truthfully. And maybe in a world so desperate to be noticed, their silence isn't a weakness. It's a reflection, a reminder that not everything valuable has to be displayed. Sometimes, the most human act is to keep something only for yourself. You know what's remarkable? The longer someone stays away from social media, the more clearly they begin to see life. Colors seem richer, time moves slower, and conversations feel more complete. It's as if stepping away from the noise makes everything real again. Because when you stop performing, you start experiencing. There's a quiet beauty in walking through life without needing evidence of every moment. You're not adjusting angles, fixing lighting, or writing captions. You're simply present, fully alive within the moment, not outside observing it. That's something social media rarely allows anymore. But the psychology behind this goes far deeper than personal taste or preference. It's connected to how our brains seek validation. Each time we post online and receive likes, comments, or hearts, the brain releases dopamine, the same chemical tied to pleasure and addiction. Eventually, we start craving that response. We begin shaping our lives around shareable moments instead of real ones. Now think about someone who refuses that pattern, who consciously chooses to step away from the dopamine trap. That isn't indifference. It's discipline. It takes awareness and strength to resist something built to hold your attention. Hooked. People who post less frequently often possess a strong internal locus of control, a psychological concept describing those whose sense of worth and happiness comes from within, not from external validation. They don't rely on digital approval to affirm their self-worth. Interestingly, research indicates that individuals who take extended breaks from posting or consuming social media experience noticeable improvements in emotional balance and overall life satisfaction. When your identity is no longer constantly reflected back through screens, it stabilizes, it becomes genuine. You stop editing your life into neatly packaged moments and instead begin living it fully, in all its imperfect, authentic complexity. Perhaps that's the quiet act of rebellion today, remaining whole in a world that rewards fragments. However, online silence isn't always a sign of peace. At times it conceals exhaustion. For many, Social media once promised connection but eventually became draining. Constantly viewing others' highlight reels while managing your own struggles leads to subtle emotional fatigue. Comparison seeps in even unintentionally. You question your worth despite knowing you shouldn't. Over time, some people step away, not out of resentment but for self-preservation. They understand they owe no performance, no justification for their absence, and no proof of happiness to be believed. That's one of this generation's quiet realizations. We've mistaken visibility for value. We've assumed that to matter we must be seen. Yet true meaning doesn't need an audience. The moments that truly define you often unfold unseen. No cameras, no captions, no applause, just you. And maybe that's what those who don't post understand best. Privacy isn't isolation, it's self-intimacy. When you stop broadcasting every thought, you begin to hear your own again. You reconnect with the forgotten parts of yourself, your quiet ambitions, hidden fears, and inner compass. In today's loud world, that's something profoundly grounding. It's not withdrawal, it's a return home. Of course, it isn't always peaceful. Doubts surface, whether silence makes you invisible or if you're falling behind as others display progress. But gradually something beautiful emerges. Worth doesn't vanish when no one's watching. It stays steady and constant like the hum of a room after a storm. Maybe that's what true confidence looks like. Not the loud display of self online, but the quiet assurance of who you are offline. People often say, if you didn't post it, did it even happen? Yet the truth is, the things that shape us most rarely reach the feed. Our growth, heartbreaks, small victories, and quiet kindnesses live in memory, not media. And perhaps that's enough. Psychologists describe authentic self-expression as congruence, the harmony between who we are inside and what we show the world. But in a time ruled by filters, that balance is easily lost. We start performing as a version of ourselves crafted for validation. So when someone chooses not to post, maybe it's their way of staying true, protecting that fragile link between their inner and outer worlds. They don't need to share every feeling to prove it's real, or capture every sunset to remember how it felt. They live deeply yet quietly. Here lies the paradox. Those who live quietly often experience life most vividly. Unburdened by performance, they notice the subtleties others overlook. The shifting light on a wall, the pause before words, the sound of distant laughter. They are present, and presence is the rarest form of wealth in a world driven by attention. Still, that presence can make them misunderstood. Some may see them as distant, secretive, or cold, but look closer. Their silence isn't emptiness. It's depth. It's the peace that comes from no longer needing to explain yourself. There's confidence in not needing to be known by everyone, just understood by a few. Those who don't post understand this best. They know not every truth belongs to the crowd. Some parts of us deserve to stay untouched by algorithms or opinions, because once shared, a moment stops being purely yours. It becomes subject to judgment and trend, and some moments are simply too sacred for that. So next time you meet someone who never posts, don't assume they're hiding. Maybe they're simply living. Maybe they've found peace in the quiet spaces untouched by the blue glow of screens. Maybe they've remembered what so many of us forget. Being unseen doesn't mean being alone, and being quiet doesn't mean being empty. Sometimes the truest expression of who you are is silence, because in the end we weren't meant to be performances, we were meant to be people. And those who don't post remind us of that. Every calm, unfiltered, beautifully invisible moment,